Hey guys, Zach and Connor here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. Today is the AFC West episode, highly anticipated between Broncos, Raiders, Chiefs, and Chargers fans. But it's the second AFC episode. This is a pretty competitive division, even though, as you'll see later on, we all have very similar predictions. This is still a competitive division, and definitely a couple of these teams could make playoff. You definitely could argue a couple teams to make the playoffs. But Connor, he's got an interesting story from today, not sports related, but a life story here. I'll let him share it before we
Yeah,
start.
I don't know if this has happened to any of you guys, but I was swimming in the ocean today and I got stung by a jellyfish. So, cross that one off the bucket list for things to do before you die. It was quite weird. I don't think it was kind of one of those things. I think it happened where I kind of just grazed it like it was there and I probably just kind of ran into it. So like it didn't, come up to me and sting me or anything because I didn't have
Mhm.
any tentacles or anything stuck on my body after it happened. But yeah, it was kind of weird. At first I thought I was just like, hitting a sharp piece of like a stick or something. I don't know. That was what it went to my head first. But then when I got out of the water, like because it hit me in the side, but when I was like trying to brush away whatever it was, it got my wrist and the top of my other hand too. And I saw these like white like welts starting to form, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I just got stung by a jellyfish.
Yep.
So it was probably a pretty small one because I didn't see it. Like I think
Hmm.
Zach said something about Portuguese man of wars, and I was like, I think I would have known if it was one of those because those are
That
huge.
those are severe pain, and they can you can have a lot more issues
Right.
with a
Yeah,
stick
and they're
that
really
thing.
big too. So I think this was just kind of like
Yeah,
a
they're
small
huge.
one. So yeah, that was what happened today. It sucked because it happened within the first 5 minutes of me being at the beach too today. It's
So
like,
you didn't have a
well,
good day.
no.
You were driving a lot too, coming back home. So but we're here. We had a little bit of complications trying to get the Skype call started, but uh, it's working now. We're grateful for that. And for if you're listening on YouTube, you're going to be kind of confused by this segment here, this little brief mention. But to anybody on iTunes and Anchor, I'm going to play a clip right now from last week's episode where Connor talks about the New York Jets kickers. So I'll let that play on. All right. And yeah, because I can do all the editing and stuff. Now we're back in real time. And as you see the meme here on the share screen, he really spoke this into fruition. And if you didn't get a chance to watch last week's episode, Connor brought up pretty a pretty good point, that I hadn't thought of, and we really hadn't thought of in too many of the other episodes that we've talked about the NFL, and it's the kicking aspect of the game, which goes overlooked by a lot of people until you miss the kick that you need to win, until you miss the game-winning
Until
kick.
you
That's
get a
when
double doink.
yeah, yeah, that's when people start noticing you. But if you're reliable, you're not gonna be in this conversation of having to try out so many people to be your team's kicker. But you know, Connor, you can tell them the cat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so we were talking about last week, we'd only ever mentioned this before with the Chicago Bears because of all the stuff that happened last season with them, but we hadn't really talked about it at all before then. And I was trying to explain last week why I had the Jets finishing third behind the Bills because all the other guys had the Bills finishing third and the Jets second. So I had to kind of explain why I thought the Jets were going to finish in third. And one of my reasons was I looked down at their kicker and I saw they had Chandler Canzero as their kicker, and I was like, oh wow, he's been like he was okay when he was in Arizona, but then he went to Tampa and struggled, and when I think he was like somewhere else and struggled too, and I was like, that could be an issue for the New York Jets going forward if having Canzero as their kicker. And so apparently, what ended up happening was I was at their first preseason game. He
Yeah.
missed 2 extra points, which, who would have thought? The starting kicker missing 2 extra points, and then apparently a couple days later he retired. So the Jets really are going to be looking for a new kicker, and I called that one that the Jets might need a kicker.
But the crazy thing about him retiring is he's only 28 years old, and kicker is not, a position where it's, physically demanding on your body. You don't retire.
Adam
You're not
Vinatieri's still
forced into
playing.
retirement. Yeah, just the longest tenured players in the NFL are mostly kickers, and then the fact that he's like in his prime, so to say, like he retires, and then also he was due to be making around $2 million, which that's a lot of money.
Decent for a
Yeah.
kicker.
So I don't know if it was just the confidence. I guess he just wasn't feeling it after that game. But man, that's really bizarre to see. Now he's really screwed over the Jets. That this if the Jets lose a couple of games by from missed field goals and missed extra points, that Connor could end up looking like a genius with his predictions of them finishing third, because I definitely do not, not going to be picking any Jets kickers in fantasy this year. I'll tell you that. But let's get moving here onto the AFC West, since that's what today's episode is featured. And before I talk about
the PowerPoint first.
Yeah, our trusty PowerPoint here. So, as I alluded to before, we have very similar predictions. It's identical, actually. So Zach, Connor, Eric, and Nathan, all the guys that have been making predictions for the divisions, we've all agreed on the Chiefs finishing first, the Chargers finishing second, Broncos finishing third, and Raiders finishing fourth. And for me, this was really a struggle between 1 and 2. I felt like 3 and 4 were pretty solid in the standings, but like Connor's, we've been talking about this before. The recent developments between a couple of these players on both these teams' availabilities have solidified these rankings, and then I'll get to a couple other reasons why I think that the Chiefs will win the division. But we'll talk about the Broncos here first, and the Broncos to me are a team that, before I run down their depth chart, I can see them winning between 7 and 9 games. So I'll go with 8 games. I'll say they go 8 and 8 because I think the team is pretty talented, but the biggest problem that the Broncos have is Joe Flacco as their quarterback, because he really is not going to take this offense over the top. They've got some good weapons in Phillip Lindsay as running back, and then Courtland Sutton as a young receiver, Emmanuel Sanders coming back from his injury last year. But the rest of the receivers, I got to give a shout out to Mr. Bug Howard. We try and look for some of these funny names. That's a pretty good one, Bug Howard. But
still can't top the Packers for best names, though.
Oh yeah, the Packers, man. That receiving core, that was funny for sure. But River Crocroft, I've never heard of, and Deshaun Hamilton is another guy that you don't hear too much of. But so it's definitely a young, inexperienced receiving core. But Courtland Sutton is a guy that I was really high on when he came out last year as a rookie, and he didn't, like most rookie receivers don't have phenomenal years, but that doesn't mean that they're bust just because they don't have insane rookie seasons. And then you also got to remember he was catching balls from Case Keenum for most of the year, so he really didn't have a great quarterback to throw him the ball. And I don't think Joe Flacco's an upgrade, so to say, from that, but he does bring a little bit of a veteran leadership that is encouraging, I guess, if you're a Broncos fan, because he did say a couple weeks ago that they were asking him if he was mentoring Drew Lock, and he was like, I'm just focused on being the quarterback, because he's at the point in his career where he's he's starting to age a little bit, and he's getting into that role where he could end up being like a journeyman type guy. I know he was with Baltimore for so long, but he's probably going to be one of those guys that bounces around from teams, having rookie quarterbacks looking for a placeholder quarterback for their rookie year, because no team wants to start their rookie quarterback in their first year, but they all end up doing that. But so that's kind of where he's going to be at, kind of like Tyrod Taylor was for the Browns, I think. I don't know when Drew Lock starts, but I assume he will eventually if Flacco goes down, which is possible because his offensive line isn't that great. They lost their center, who was a good center for him. Garrett Bowles is a first round pick from a couple years ago, who hasn't been the best. And then they've got their big kind of free agency thing was getting Jawan James from Miami, a solid right tackle, but it's not the best offensive line. It's not the worst. And Noah Fant, they've got they drafted him in the first round at tight end, but he's not really a blocking tight end. Do you remember about Noah Fant? Because I know Hawkinson was a huge blocking tight end. I want to say Fant was, a predominantly pass catching one.
Yeah, I think Fant was more of a receiving tight end. He's more of the tight end that's going to give you the big offense. Mm-hmm. Whereas you're right, Hawkinson was a big blocking tight end.
Yeah,
he can catch too, but he's kind of like. I mean, I don't want to put him on the same level as Gronk, but he's he can block and he can catch.
He's got like the comparisons to that, yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. They acquired Theo Riddick, who we actually talked about him being in the NFC North episode with the Lions, but the Lions made a surprising move for some reason, cut him, and now he joined the Broncos. But he's going to be battling with Royce Freeman for that second spot. Phillip Lindsay will probably be the bell cow for this team. He was an undrafted rookie last year, a pretty good story, being an undrafted rookie and then leading, the league for a couple of weeks in rushing totals, and really came onto the scene when I'll be honest, when my dad first picked him up after week 1 of fantasy football in our family league, I was like, what are you doing? It's obviously Royce Freeman. I was kind of jabbing at him for that, but he was definitely right on that, and Royce Freeman really got phased out, and after 2 more weeks, I was like, yeah, I got that prediction wrong. So I'm not gonna underestimate him again. I think he's gonna be really good for him. And then defensively, I still think this is a really good defense. People sleep on them, but they've lost some pieces, but they've still got some premier defenders like Von Miller, Chris Harris, and then they've also got Bradley Chubb. So when you look at the more important defensive positions like pass rusher and having a good solid corners, they've got those. They're weaker on some other positions, granted, but for the more important defensive positions, I think they have really good players for. And then their linebacker core could be a little bit better with Josie Jewell and Todd Davis, but Kareem Jackson, he's an older guy as a corner, but he's experienced. And then they've got Bryce Callahan as the nickel corner, and then William Parks and Justin Simmons at safety. So it's not, now I'm looking at it, it's not the best defense in the world, but they've got some stars that'll get picks.
Good parts.
They'll get picks, they'll get sacks, so they'll, for fantasy wise, for fantasy wise, this could be a good defense to pick up in the later rounds of the draft. And then we talked about the kickers at the beginning of the show. I got to mention the kickers now. Brandon McManus is their kicker. Honestly, I think he's kind of average, but
he's solid.
Yeah, he's solid, but you got to remember too, they're kicking in Denver, so you can kick. Just that. Makes.
I mean, Prater proved he could be a good kicker outside of Denver, so.
Yeah. So I don't, and then they've got it's not really an advantage since both teams get the same environment, but on their home field, you can kick the ball from I don't know, the 45 and potentially make it with a good kicker. But I'm curious, Connor, to see where you think. So I'm going to go with 8-8 for their record. I think they're a solid team, but kind of like Joe Flacco, they're not terrible, but they're not going to take you to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Flacco, he's a solid. Like I don't know if I want to say solid, but he's serviceable as a quarterback. I mean, I watched him for many years in Baltimore. Being a Steelers fan, so I watched him play against Pittsburgh a lot, and I mean, it was just interesting to me why he could never. Because the Steelers secondary is nothing to write home about, and it hasn't been for the past few seasons. And it was always interesting to me. He could never put up those big numbers against the Steelers. And it was like, okay,
Mhm.
you're going up against a secondary it's like just an average secondary that doesn't really have any stars on it, and you can't seem to put together a game. Like the Steelers would still beat them all the time. I mean, they would beat us occasionally, but for the most part, the Steelers would win those games. And I'm like, I don't understand why he can't have better games against us when we have this crap secondary.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's a serviceable quarterback. He's not gonna. I think he's a slight upgrade over Case Keenum. I think Case Keenum kind of just had like his moment in the sun that year, a
Yeah,
couple
yeah.
seasons ago in Minnesota. But I think he kind of came back to reality last year in Denver, and he kind of went back to that, the form he was in when he played for the Rams when he was swapping time with Nick Foles. So I think he can hold the position. I don't think Locke is going to start this year. I mean, and who knows about Drew Lock? I mean, we've seen how the quarterbacks that John Elway has picked in the past have
Oh, that's
gone.
true.
So
Yeah.
I have no idea about Drew Lock. And I mean, he fell later in the draft than any of us here on the podcast
Hmm.
thought. I mean, Nathan didn't do the draft prediction with us, but Zach and Eric and I all had him going in the first round. We thought Denver was going to take him for sure. And then even when later in the first round, when Denver traded back up into the first round, I was like, oh, okay, this is for Drew Lock. Like they want to get him right now, and they
Yeah.
didn't take him. They took someone else. So it surprised me how far he fell, considering
Yep.
that Elway really liked him, and of course there were other teams that needed quarterbacks that didn't take him. So it makes me wonder how good he actually is. I mean, but I
I
think we're
think
gonna have to
he.
wait until next year
Yeah.
to see.
I think he was the fourth QB taken in the draft too. So,
Yeah,
but
because let's see, because
those
Murray,
Missouri
Jones,
quarterbacks, man,
and
they're
Haskins.
overrated.
Oh yeah, I know. I
I,
remember when Chase Daniel first came into the league, and everybody thought he was going to be really good, and I don't even know where he is anymore.
Blaine
So
Gabbert too, man. They like
you know
that.
all about that.
Oh man, but that it was crazy though at the time. I didn't realize because uh, the year before, the Jaguars were okay. Like they were pretty good. They had a chance to make the playoffs if they had beaten the Colts in one of their games. But
Was that when they still had Garrard at quarterback?
yeah, well, that was when they had Garrard, but they were going through like an ownership change, and the whole organization was like a mess with the owner before the ownership change, the and yeah, dude, it kind of surprised everybody when they drafted him, and even it was weird because the experts really got him wrong. There was like a magazine that was saying like he should be taken above Cam Newton, and like then the Jaguars actually traded up to pick him too, made it a little bit worse that they gave up extra capital to get him. And then you look at the guys drafted right after him to like division rivals, like J.J. Watt went like a pick later. It was just
Not good.
not a good memory. So
Yeah,
I feel like the Missouri quarterbacks, I've yet to see one really flourish, but
yeah. I
so I'm
mean, it's
I'm
probably
kind of
because they're playing in the SEC, and they think, oh, well, they're playing in the SEC, so they must be good. But
yeah,
yeah.
so
Well, honestly, that's I don't want to get too far away from the AFC West here, but that's one thing I want to talk about. SEC quarterbacks in general, though, like the SEC is obviously the powerhouse of college football, but
mhm.
you don't really see their quarterbacks going on and doing anything ever. Like I can't remember, all these teams and that are so good in the SEC, and I think it's
It's
because
been
the
a
SEC.
yeah.
Yeah, the SEC is so like the offenses in the SEC are so college oriented
Hmm.
that which is probably what makes them so good, like what makes the conference so good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't translate at all into NFL success, which is why you see
Yeah.
quarterbacks
Yeah.
from like the big like quarterbacks from Oklahoma and quarterbacks from like the Big Ten are the ones that you hear about more. You don't really hear about the SEC quarterbacks having any real success in the NFL.
The only ones that I can think of that are good right now would be like Cam Newton from Auburn, and
Cam Newton was only at Auburn for like a year or two, so I don't know.
But he was from Florida before.
That's true. You're right. You're right.
And then Matt Stafford at Georgia, but those are the only two big ones coming to my mind. Like Florida's had a couple guys get drafted as backups, and then same with Auburn, and Alabama's classic for that too, with their quarterbacks being backups.
Right. So and Josh Dobbs is backing up Roethlisberger right now. So anyway, back to the AFC West. Yeah, I mean, the question is who is he going to throw to besides Emmanuel Sanders? I mean, Cortland Sutton is okay, but I mean, like you said, I've never heard of Deshaun Hamilton or River Craycraft. So or Craycraft, however the hell you pronounce that. Sorry, YouTube. But
Crocraft, maybe, I don't know.
And then I'm interested to see how Noah Fant turns out, because like we said, I don't think he's much of a blocking tight end. I think he's more of a receiving tight end. So it could give Joe Flacco a good target to throw to when his only real receiver is Emmanuel Sanders. And I'm curious to see how Philip Lindsay does this year, because like you said, he came out of nowhere. I didn't expect that at all. I think the Steelers had a game against the Broncos last year, and I was like, Philip Lindsay, whatever, he's not going to do that good. And then he kind of ran all over us. So I think, is he going to go for a sophomore slump? Who knows? I mean, now that people have tape on him, it's kind of, it's not a surprise anymore. So it's the second year is always telling you if they're really going to be a star or not. So I think Theo Riddick is a good addition. I don't know if he'll overtake Royce Freeman, but I mean, he's one of the best third down backs in the league in my mind, is Theo Riddick. He's one of the best receiving backs. He just doesn't get any credit because he can't run the ball at all normally. I mean, he's kind of like James White, I think, with New England, where he's pretty much strictly a receiving back. So, I mean, he could probably play wide receiver if he wanted to. So we'll see how that goes. And then the defense, I mean, one guy you didn't mention who's pretty good is Derek Wolfe there on the defensive line. He's kind of the anchor of the defensive line. He's the veteran presence on the line there. Because the other guys, I mean, Shelby Harris is okay. I don't think I've heard of Adam Gotsis. I don't remember him. So, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. If Chubb can continue to develop, they'll rack up sacks. Just the inside linebacker core. Because that's going to be an issue against the run. Because that's the problem that Pittsburgh had last year. I mean, we had T.J. Watt on the outside and Bud Dupree on the out, who, he's not a superstar or anything, but he was pretty good last year. Ever since he switched sides, he's gotten better. So we were racking up sacks. I mean, we were tied for first in sacks, but our inside linebacker core was horrible, and that's why we were getting run on the whole time, because ever since Shazier's injury, we haven't had a good inside linebacker to kind of anchor that spot. So I think that's going to be an issue for them. Even if they get all these sacks against the run, they're going to be in trouble. And I mean, the secondary is obviously not what it used to be. It's not the no-fly zone anymore. But Chris Harris is true. Chris Harris is still a really good cornerback. Kareem Jackson is pretty serviceable. A bit weak at the safety position. So I mean, originally, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, maybe the Broncos could compete for maybe 10 wins, maybe get in there for a wild card spot. But at this point in my mind, everything would have to go right for that to happen. I don't see them falling below the Raiders, but I'm probably in the same boat as you, 7-9, 8-8. I think is where the Broncos are going to finish, unless absolutely everything goes right. I don't see them competing for a wild card spot, actually.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page here, but before these predictions, they were solidly third. We weren't debating them and the Raiders
even before see them falling below Oakland at all.
Yeah. So moving on.
Oakland's a different story.
Soon to be Las Vegas too, but So Kansas City is our next team to mention. Obviously, they went to overtime in the AFC Championship game from the Super Bowl, so they're returning back much of their same roster, and they're really, poised to make a Super Bowl run. I guess they didn't make a Super Bowl run last year, but, be in that contention for sure. the top at the top of the AFC. And this team, man, is it offensively? This is one of the most gifted teams in the league, probably the most. And they lost their star running back Kareem Hunt too, which
screwed me in fantasy. By the way, thanks Kareem.
Okay, so and look, they've got some great weapons here. We'll talk about Tyreek Hill, and we're gonna kind of honor Eric here and do a rant about Tyreek Hill. If any of you guys couldn't guess from the hint at last week, this rant is going to be about Tyreek Hill, but this episode's rant anyways. But aside from, the off the field rant reasons, what a perfect receiver to pair with Patrick Mahomes. Like, you've got one of the fastest receivers paired up with one of the quarterbacks that can throw it the farthest,
Yeah, I like him and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
But between them, they got the strongest arms in the league.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great pairing right there. Sammy Watkins, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but the fact that he's still with them, I guess they had enough money to give him a contract. He's a nice addition. And Mecole Hardman is a guy from Georgia, a rookie receiver, who they kind of drafted to be Tyreek Hill's replacement because, like we'll talk about in the reason why originally I was leaning towards placing the Chargers fourth was that I think everybody was under the assumption that Tyreek Hill was going to be suspended, and not just suspended for like a week or two, like get a significant suspension. And so the Chiefs were under that assumption too, and they drafted kind of his prototype in Mecole Hardman, and I think he's going to be a star. I'm really high on him. He's a second-round pick, and there weren't too many first-round receivers. I think just like one or two.
Well, it took forever for them to get picked, and it was like only at the end, really, of the first round where they got taken.
Yeah, so I think he's going to be great. He's somebody to watch in fantasy. I don't usually like to spoil my fantasy notes and stuff, but that's
all
that's
those
a guy
notes on
I would
Eric
definitely,
that you've been taking.
yeah. Now you guys can get notes on me, but the Yahoo and ESPN, they probably won't put him very highly in their stuff, but there's always these guys that you don't know about or you don't think about, but he's one of the rookies, definitely out of the rookie receivers that I'm going to be eyeing. So, I just put it out there for everybody now they know, but I wanted to be transparent with you guys. I didn't want to be like, oh, Mecole Hardman, yeah, he's there. I wanted to give you my honest opinion on him. So with that trio, and plus DeMarcus Robinson too, he'll get some catches, and I haven't even mentioned the best tight end in the league, Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, now that Gronk's gone, it's pretty indisputable right now.
Yeah, some people like my friend Kyle are gonna argue against him because he's not a true tight end. He's more like a receiving tight end. He doesn't block very well, but as far as pass catching goes, he's for sure the best when it comes to that. So
yeah, some people will try and argue Greg Olsen, or I think some people are really still high on George Kittle, but it's pretty hard right now to argue, in my mind, that Kelce is the best tight end in the league right now.
Because another thing too, he's been proven. Kittle's a one-year guy, and then Olsen's got injury histories and stuff. I like Ertz a lot, but Ertz has never had the numbers.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Ertz too.
Yeah. And then another thing, Ertz plays in like a 2 tight end set also with Dallas Goedert, so he's got that's a whole different story. But and then at running back wise, this is what's going to be interesting. I think Damian Williams coming over from Miami is the consensus running back that they're going to go with. I can't imagine that Carlos Hyde is going to be the guy since
he got cut from Cleveland and Jacksonville.
He had such a terrible year last year. He's bounced around. He was with San Francisco for a couple of years, but he's going to be a guy that will rotate in and out. I guess since Damian Williams isn't like Alvin Kamara or or Zeke Elliott,
He's
Saquon
not an
Barkley.
every
He's
down
not. Yeah,
back.
yeah. But I definitely give some of these other guys on the roster, like the rookie Darwin Thompson and Darrell Williams. I give them a shot to compete with Hyde for sure. So I definitely don't think that second running back spot has been declared yet, like a winner. And then fullback, I usually don't talk about fullbacks because I don't know many, but Anthony Sherman he's one of the, like, his name's capitalized there, so that's a good thing for any of you guys that haven't caught on to those. But he's a pretty good fullback and just adds to the offensive power that they have. Their offensive line isn't the best in the world, but last year it didn't really matter with the
Yeah.
offensive numbers that they put up. So they've got Eric Fisher as their left tackle, and he hasn't, lived up to the number one overall pick hype or anything, but he's not a complete bust since he's still on the team. So, and then defensively is, where most of the problems come with Kansas City, but I do think that they have done a nice job of getting some good players like Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark from Seattle and Houston. And I think the defense is going to be better than it has before, but with Andy Reid as the head coach, he's almost like the James or not James, the I was thinking James Harden on the Rockets, like the Mike D'Antoni of the NFL, where he's just so offensive oriented. He just forgets about the defense, and the defense gives out huge point numbers. There used to be, Kansas City used to be known as a pretty good
Oh
defensive
yeah.
team, like when Connor had them in fantasy against the Jets.
Yeah, well, I mean,
uh,
it's interesting you mentioned that too, that he's so offensive playing. 'Cause I remember Philadelphia actually had a decent defense when he was
yeah,
coaching there. Like, they had Brian Dawkins and like, it wasn't the greatest in the world, but it was better than the Chiefs' defense was last year. So
but I mean, the rest of their defense, I feel like, can be better than it was last year.
hmm
I mean, they were so bad last year,
yeah,
but Tyrann Mathieu is kind of like, as much as I love Eric Berry, I think he's an upgrade at this point in his career with all the, Eric Berry's battled through so much that, having a fresh guy like Tyrann Mathieu, I think, is going to, be good for him. And then Frank Clark, too, is going to get some sacks for him. So if this defense can really just get turnovers, is really what they need to do. If they can get turnovers, then I think this team's going to win a lot of games. They can still give up points, but uh, so as far as like a record for the Chiefs, I'll go that they could win maybe 13 games, but I'll put it at 12 just because they play in a tough to. Well, actually, here I'll give my. Here's another reason why I think the Chiefs are gonna win the division is historically, in the Andy Reid era, they've owned the AFC West. Like
yeah,
they they lost one game to the Chargers last year, but that was like an aberration when you look at the history between the Chiefs and Chargers. They've really owned the division, and they've won it a couple years in a row now, ever since Peyton Manning left Denver. But
yeah.
they've made work of teams like, they have San Diego or Los Angeles' number. I said San Diego. I'm still,
We're
you
still
still,
stuck on that.
yeah. But so that's another reason why I think, that until Los Angeles, the LA Chargers, until they really prove themselves that they can beat Kansas City twice, I just have a hard time, so I think they'll, they, I'll say they go undefeated in the division. I say they go 6-0 just because of how many years that they've done that before. So I'll say that they win between like 12 and 13 games. They'll probably be, well, with the Patriots having that easy schedule too,
Well, yeah, the
they'll
Patriots
probably end
get
up.
them at home,
And yeah,
so
so the Patriots play the Chiefs at home. I'll say the Patriots win that. So I'll say the Chiefs end up with the 2 seed in the AFC. and it's gonna be a battle with them.
Yeah.
A rematch against the Patriots because they came so close last year to being.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's pretty bold prediction saying they're gonna go 6-0 in the division, considering how high people have been on the Chargers recently. I mean, I think with this offense, it's really all going to come down to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, can he replicate? I mean, I'm not saying he has to replicate what he did last year, but can he still play at a high level? Because again, it's one of those like, I know it's not technically his sophomore year, but it's going to be his sophomore year as a starter.
Yeah.
So, more game film, more studies, less out of nowhere. Like, wow, this guy's really good. So I'm interested to see how that goes. I mean, I don't think he's going to. I still think he'll probably throw for 4,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns. But can he carry the load? Because, again, I mean, we'll see how Damian Williams does. I think he's going to be good. But the second running back position, I mean, Carlos Hyde, I wouldn't trust him to even be a number 2 running back after the way he performed last year. So, and Damian Williams can't do it all himself. And I mean, aside from the off-field issues, you're right. Tyreek Hill is, I mean, he's ridiculously fast. It's crazy how fast he is. Funny enough, I still think he's actually slower than Deshaun Jackson. But I think Deshaun Jackson is still officially the fastest in the league. But Tyreek Hill is not far behind in that respect. I mean, once he gets in the open field, I mean, he's gone. Like, you're not catching him.
Plus special teams too, he'll get a punt return or kick returns,
and they can run end arounds and stuff with him.
Yeah.
So Sammy Watkins, I don't know why the Chiefs gave him as big of a contract as they did. I mean, it was baffling to me last year when, considering that the dude hasn't played a full season his whole career. Like, he got injured. He got injured so many times in Buffalo. And then he was, got injured again in L.A. and, was kind of serviceable. He was supposed to be the number 1 guy, but Robert Woods kind of turned out to be the number 1 guy that season. So then they dumped Watkins and brought in Brandon Cooks. So I don't know why they paid Sammy Watkins all that money. I guess somebody thought that he was worth it. I don't know. He kind of ruined Buffalo for years.
I honestly think he's still going off his he went to Clemson, right?
Yeah.
I think he's still going off of that, hype that he had because he was a top 10 pick.
Well, I know. Buffalo. So, that's what I was saying. He ruined Buffalo for years because Buffalo gave up so much to trade up and get him. And it's amazing to me how, had Buffalo, they could, who else they could have taken at that spot instead was they could have taken Khalil Mack. But instead they took Sammy Watkins. And the Raiders had the next pick after that, and they were like, "Oh my God, they passed on Khalil Mack."
I don't know how he fell that far. Like, I thought the Jags were going to take him, but they took Dante Fowler instead, which kind of surprised me at the time.
Yeah,
man, that was a steal for sure. But now he's a Bear, so that doesn't matter about Oakland.
Right. Yeah, right. So I mean, but yeah, I don't know why Sammy Watkins is getting. I mean, like, I think he's okay, but I don't know why he's getting paid the money he's getting paid. I think he's more of a slot receiver and less of a. Well, I know he's not really a slot receiver, but he really is like a true number 2. Like, he can't be a number 1 for anybody. So, yeah, and like I said before, Travis Kelce, it's kind of hard to argue right now that he is the best tight end in the league. So, even if Tyreek Hill is the only real viable option out there, wide receiver, he's always got Kelce that he can dump it down to. I mean, boy, whenever I was playing against Uncle Greg last year in fantasy, when he had Kelce, he would just kill me. I'd just be watching these games, and I'm like, can Kelce, like, stop getting catches and stop getting touchdowns? Because it's killing me right now. And, and about Kareem Hunt screwing me in fantasy last year. God, he ruined my season, so I hope you're happy, Kareem Hunt, that you punched your girlfriend or whatever, because you ruined my fantasy season.
Wow. Oh, man. Well, I can go up to Le'Veon Bell too and be like,
True.
hey man, I used a number 2 overall pick on you, and you got me 0 points. Thanks a lot.
He actually apologized on Twitter too.
Yeah, he did. It was like a year later though. He didn't say anything during the season. I guess he was still negotiating maybe or whatever, but I don't.
Getting
He,
fat,
yeah.
dropping rap albums, you know.
Uh-huh. So, but he finally apologized to everybody. But what good's that going to do me a year later?
Yeah,
He
seriously.
said, you can count on him this year, but I'm not going to be able to count
Yeah, whatever.
on
But yeah, so I mean,
him.
the defense that's gonna be an issue for them. I mean, honestly, I'll get to this later when we were talking about the Chargers, but I did have a really tough time. I went back and forth between do I think the Chiefs or the Chargers are gonna win the division, and it's mainly the defense problem. I mean, because obviously the Chiefs have no problems on offense, like generating points, but I mean, gone is Derek Johnson, gone is Justin Houston, gone is Tamba Hali. You know, all those linebackers that were so good for them, and now they've got Frank Clark and Reggie Ragland that are supposed to be the guys, and they're just you can't even compare them to the other linebackers that were there. I mean, I know Justin Houston had his injury problems, but when he wasn't injured, he was a beast.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and the defensive line, nobody's going to scare you on the defensive line. I mean, Alex Okafor is okay, and Chris Jones is pretty serviceable, but no one's going to scare you. So they have a lot of front seven issues. I mean, the secondary, I think, is fairly solid. I mean, Kendall Fuller is a decent cornerback, and Bashad Breeland's okay, too, and obviously Tyrann Mathieu. If he can kind of find his form that he had in Arizona, he can be a top-notch safety.
Yeah.
But so I think the secondary is where they're going to have to make up for the lack of the front seven, because I think they're going to have a lot of issues stopping the run, and I think they're going to have a lot of issues getting to the quarterback too. So
Mm-hmm.
the secondary is going to be working overtime, trying to cover everybody. I mean, since we mentioned this with Denver, the kicker situation. Harrison Butker is a decent kicker, no issues at kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I think the defense issue is what's going to keep them from getting more than 12 wins in my mind. I mean, I think they're going to lose at least one game to the Chargers. I think they'll lose that game to New England. So I agree that I think New England will still be the number one seed in the AFC. But I think the Chiefs will hold on to the 2 seed. I think they'll win the division. I think same as you. I think 12 and
Mm-hmm.
4 is where they're going to be. I can't see
Yeah.
them getting any higher than that though with the defensive issues. If they had a decent defense, then yeah, I could totally see them going like 14 or 15 wins. But the defense is just
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
major hole right now that you know.
So we'll talk about now Tyreek Hill here. There's a mini rant for Eric out there. I know he wanted to talk about this, but to me, I mean, it's just crazy how with the evidence that the phone call, if anybody listened to that, where he was just like verbally abusing uh, the mother of his child, like that alone is grounds for a suspension in my mind. But with all the, I guess he was never technically charged with battery of his son, but man, that it's just crazy to me how, the kid, the poor kid's got a broken arm and there's no justice at all. Nobody's been held accountable for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And if
well, I
you're an
mean,
NFL player too, you don't, you're supposed to be at higher standards than just everybody else. And you look at these other guys that get suspended, for taking these, Golden Tate, suspended for taking like Viagra or something like that, like it's like a totally meaningless crime, but uh,
oh yeah.
I
Well, I mean, it kind of goes along the lines of you were talking about meaningless crimes. You know, all these players these days that are getting suspended for weed. It's
yeah.
like weed is legal. Like, what if they go to a state where it's legal? Like, if like one of the Broncos players is smoking weed, like it's
Hmm.
not illegal, and it's not a performance enhancing drug by
Oh
any
no.
stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So it's kind of baffling to me why that's still so big on the suspension. But yeah, with Tyreek Hill, I mean, especially after the way they treated Adrian Peterson with his
Mhm.
whole incident with his son. I mean, I don't, and that was just from him like spanking his kid with like a switch or whatever, and he had like some bruises or whatever. But this kid, Tyreek Hill's kid, had like a whole broken arm.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you, especially
And
after
the kid's scared of his dad too. They're like the mother said, like, he's scared of you. Like, that is that not
Right.
concerning at all? Like, that
Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
going to be scared of your father, unless he did something like that. But
right. And considering that, back with the whole, when we go back to Ray Rice, when the league implemented the policy that all domestic abuse issues were going to be a minimum, or, well, they were going to start at 6 games.
Mhm.
Like, they could be reduced, which is what happened for most of them. But, like, it was going to be a starting point of a 6-game suspension. And, and we saw Kareem Hunt's been suspended for, 10 games?
Yeah, something like
Dude,
that. It's
which, like, obviously there was
majority of
more
the season.
evidence and stuff with that and everything, but he got suspended for 10 games for the incident that he had, and Tyreek Hill doesn't get suspended at all. It's mind
Greg
blowing.
Hardy's out of the league.
Yeah, Greg
Like,
Hardy's out of the league. Like, he's in MMA now, so he said he'd come back if the Cowboys or the Panthers offered him a contract, but no one else would he go back to.
oh wow, you
So
can't be picky when it comes to that stuff, man.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, Roger Goodell really needs to figure this out. The league itself just needs to figure out what
It
its
brings up
punishment is.
conspiracy theories about, like, oh, they want the Chiefs to dethrone the Patriots and stuff, like, like it's
Yeah, well, I mean,
it
it's
brings these conspiracy theories to tuition or fruition. I don't know what I'm saying, but
I think it's fruition.
fruition, yeah. But it brings them up when you don't suspend a guy with so much baggage. He's got a history of it too, man. It's not his first time.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you talk about conspiracy theories, it kind of goes back to, even when, like, I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before, that incident where Gronk, like, speared Tre'Davious White in the back of the
Oh
head
yeah,
when he was on the ground, and they only gave him 1 game suspension for that, and everybody was saying that, it was because they wanted him to be available for when the Patriots played the Steelers. Like, they didn't want him to be suspended for that game because it would be, better TV ratings or whatever.
yeah.
I'm not saying that just because I'm a Steelers fan, but
That was a vicious. That was a violent
yeah,
play.
like the Tre'Davious White was on the ground, like face down on the ground, and he just like forearmed him in the back of the head. Like, really?
And
You're
then
telling me
didn't
that?
he, like, complain about it too or something? He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
I mean, I'm
why
sure.
me? Like, what did I
Well,
do?
all players do that,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
They
They're
always
like,
look at the ref like, "What did I
yeah.
do wrong?" Like, what? So,
Man, jeez.
yeah, I don't know. The NFL is the whole punishment system is really in a bad place right now. It's
Yeah.
amazing to me that Tyreek Hill didn't get any games at all.
Yeah. Wow. All right, so moving on to the Chargers now, who I keep trying to say San Diego Chargers, honestly.
Oh, we're
It
gonna be
just
doing
feels
that. We're
so
gonna be
weird.
doing that with the Raiders here in a couple of years. We're gonna
Oh,
keep saying
yeah.
Oakland.
Yeah. I don't really have a problem with the Los Angeles Rams. I don't really say St. Louis too much, but
Well,
man,
it's been a bit longer
yeah,
for them too. So and the fact that they used to be the
that's
LA
true.
Rams too
Yeah.
is like it's kind of normal in
So
a way.
mhm. So the Chargers, man, they've got a great team that really, I think, could win a lot of different divisions if they were in, different. If they were not in the AFC West, they could be a top team like
Maybe if they
last
were
year.
in the East, they could challenge New England.
Yeah, last year didn't they have a better record than New
Oh
England?
yeah, it was one of
And
those things that like
yeah,
if it wasn't for how the playoff system works, they would have been the number 2 seed in the
hmm
playoffs. But
it's
considering the
rare
way,
that happens. Yeah,
yeah, but since the way it works, they were the
Mhm.
5th seed because the Chiefs won the division. So
Yeah. So they're returning a lot of their offense with the question mark of Melvin Gordon. Obviously, they don't list him here on the Our Lads website, but he's still. This is my thing with Our Lads. I know they're projecting this stuff, but you know, it's hard to project off the team a guy that they have under contract who's their star running back. But anyway, but obviously, he said he's not playing. He wants to trade, so who knows what's going to happen for that? Maybe they make a deal work. I don't. Maybe it's too far gone. I don't really know. But the rest of their offensive unit is, I think, pretty good, but not not anyone on the Chiefs level. They've got Keenan
no,
Allen, who I've always thought of as a good receiver, but he's due for an injury. It's sad to say, but he had a healthy season last year. I'd be wary of picking him in fantasy. And then Mike Williams is a guy too that he struggled his rookie year. He had a better year last year, but uh, still, he's not, I think, on the level anywhere near of Tyreek Hill or Sammy. He could end up becoming like a Sammy Watkins. I could see,
I think
but
he's better than Sammy Watkins.
yeah, maybe. But and then Travis Benjamin too. He's pretty good. I think he's going to be a good slot receiver for him. And then after that, it kind of tapers off. Jeremy spelled with a G Davis.
Are we trying to say Germany here? Like what?
That's what I thought when I read it. And then the offensive line I think is pretty good too. But people I think are so obsessed with Hunter Henry. I don't understand the obsession with these Charger fans that Hunter Henry is going to be, it's Hunter Henry's back. Like, show me that he can stay healthy and show me that he can really be good, because he was, honestly, I think living in Antonio Gates' shadows back when he was still in the league. So I'm not, I'm not that hip on Hunter Henry, but some people are. Virgil Green's a nice second option, so their tight ends aren't bad, but Hunter Henry's one of those guys that I think gets overrated a little bit just because I guess he misses time and then they don't have anybody at tight end, so they're like, oh, Hunter Henry was amazing, But they've still got Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and a good thing for the Chargers anyways is that they have one of the more premium backup quarterbacks too. If Phillip Rivers were to go down, Tyrod Taylor is probably at the top, near the top of the backup quarterback list. You could argue him the starter on some team.
Yeah.
So
he's serviceable. He's one of those guys that he's not going to make mistakes. He's not going to, he won't put up numbers, but he's not going to make mistakes either.
So, and then Phillip Rivers is still playing at a high level, and he's motivated highly too. And I think this is really the Chargers' last chance to make a Super Bowl run with Phillip Rivers, because he's getting up there in age, and you can only be the guy for so long. So I think this year he'll still have a good season, but I think this is going to be his last major season. I think after this year they're going to target somebody in next year's draft to be their quarterback, and then kind of play him as a backup to Phillip for a year or two maybe. And then eventually when Rivers gets to the point where it's questionable for him to be a starter, they'll plop in the new guy. But he's still the unquestioned guy for right now for sure. And I'm sure he's, highly motivated for how he's never, I don't think, been in an AFC championship game.
No, they've never made it past the divisional round.
Yeah, so that playing this long on the same team like that, you would, and he had some pretty good teams back in the days too with LT on their team, but
and Gates in his prime.
Gates and Jackson, but then defensively, let me ask the Twitter question too while we're sticking on the offense here. We got a question coming in the podcast from the Time Skew podcast, and their Twitter has just Time Skew Pod. And they said, when are you drafting Melvin Gordon? So for me, I think I would look to draft him towards the end of the second round, just because, like Connor and I were talking before about this, the risk reward. When you get down to the second round, sometimes you end up with busts, and if he ends up playing, I don't really care what team he ends up playing for. If he ends up playing, and not ending up like Le'Veon Bell, he's going to contribute and he's going to be a first-round talent. So if for some reason he slips nearly to the late second round, if it's still early second round, that's a little bit too risky to take, because there's still really proven guys at the second round level that I would still want ahead of a question mark. But for right now, I would say end of second round. But still, another thing, guys, you don't have to make your fantasy football drafts in the middle of August. Like, it's
we're waiting till the end.
Yeah, you'll have a lot more information in the coming weeks. This is still week 1 of the preseason, so that's where I stand on on Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat that I think him and Ezekiel Elliott, as long as they're still trying to continue their holdouts, I mean, late second round. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because who knows? There's some people that may be willing to take that risk and pick them up, and you know, I don't know how many other leagues do this. I'm sure a lot of them do, but the draft is like a snake format basically. So if you draft first in the first round, then you're drafting last in the second round, and then so on and so forth. So some of those people who are drafting really high up in the first round might be willing to take that risk and get like Ezekiel Elliott or Melvin Gordon at that time, because if they turn out to be good, then they're going to have two like all pro running backs on their team,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to have their first or second pick where they get like Barkley or McCaffrey or one of those guys, and then also with their late second round pick they're getting Melvin Gordon or Ezekiel Elliott. So it's that's where I'd put him right now. If he, before our draft at least, because I don't know when everybody else is going to be doing their drafts, but if he ends his holdout here sometime before the draft, then I would definitely consider picking him like late first round, early second round.
Mm-hmm.
But if his holdout's still going on, then yeah, I'm with Zach on the late second round.
Yeah, and also too, even if he's still holding out, if there's more information on it, like because this is still so early, and people are still holding out. That's kind of normal for a couple people to still be holding out at this point. But once we get really closer to the season, I think we'll get a better idea of if he's truly serious about it or not, and seeing what the Chargers do too. Because if the Chargers are committed to Eckler, then that'll also tell you that hey, they're probably not going to have him playing for him, and then the trade thing comes up. But whoever trades for him is going to have to pay him, that. Uh, so now looking here at their defense quickly, they've got this is a pretty underrated defense. I feel like they don't get mentioned a whole lot, or they get mentioned, but not as much I think as they should. But Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, that pass rushing duo is uh, man, that's superior.
Scary.
Yeah, definitely it rivals with Von Miller and Chubb. I think both of them are better than Chubb, but I think Vaughn's better than both of those guys. But you could make the case that they're better. I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably would take those two over Vaughn and Chubb. But
Mm-hmm.
the rest of their linebacker core is probably their biggest question mark. But they did bring in Thomas Davis from Carolina as like a veteran guy. The other two,
leadership.
yeah, the other two guys are all right, I guess, but not the stars of their defense. And then the secondary, I think, is really good with Casey Hayward and Desmond King at corner. They've also got Michael Davis. Not too familiar with him, but this Derwin James, I think, he's already from his rookie season. He's one of the best safeties in the league. I think he only gets better. And he's, if you have a really good safety, you can kind of afford to have a weaker corner, which they do, I think. But still, Casey Hayward's a really good cornerback. This team is going to get sacks. They're going to get picks. And when you have such a great pass rushing duo, it makes quarterbacks throw the ball off rhythm, and then that leads to interceptions for the whole rest of the team. So I'm pretty high in this defense. Fantasy-wise, I put them in the top 3. I think defensively, I think they can get a lot of sacks, a lot of picks, and hold teams to low points too. But still, when you talk about winning games, I still feel like the Chiefs have had the Chargers number all these years. I feel I don't feel like that's going to change this year. The one win that the Chargers did have was very close. They got like a 2-point conversion to win, and I know there was like a questionable call before that too or something. So, I'm gonna like I said, I'm gonna stand by the Chiefs 6-0 in the division. I just feel like the history between these two teams has leaned towards the Chiefs so much. But make no mistake, the Chargers are going to be a threat for everybody else. And, I think they're solidly going to make a wild card. I think this is the most solid, wild card pick that there is for both the NFC and the AFC. So I'll let you go on, talk about the Chargers now, Connor.
Well, I know recently, I don't know how long ago this was, but there was a post on Twitter that I made that Zach and Eric also did theirs too, where we covered a couple of questions regarding teams like in the NFL, like who's your favorite team, who's the most overrated, who's your favorite player, blah, blah, blah. One of those questions was, who do you think's the most underrated team? And I can't remember who. I think Zach put the Jaguars, but Eric and I both put the Chargers as our most underrated team in the league. And so I think that's true. I don't think people give the Chargers enough credit. I mean, Phillip Rivers is still doing it at, however old he is, 35 or whatever, 36. So he's still doing it. He's not like him and Ben are still. They're the two out of that 2004 draft class that are still doing it. Eli Manning's starting to fall off, but Rivers and Ben are still doing it. And Keenan Allen, like, if he can stay healthy, I think I'd say he's a top 10 receiver if he can stay healthy. Like, low end of the top 10, but if he can stay healthy, he's a top 10 receiver. I think Mike Williams is decent. I've seen good things out of him, and Travis Benjamin can play in the slot, so I think that's a decent trio. I don't know. I'd kind of put it on the same level as the Chiefs, maybe, because they have, Sammy Watkins. I don't think he's that good, and obviously, I lost his name now. The rookie receiver,
Mecole Hardman.
Mecole Hardman, like he's unproven. Yeah. Like I know he's supposed to be good, but he's unproven right now. So. I think, and like Tyreek Hill is obviously Tyreek Hill, but I think it's on the same level, maybe a little bit lower, but very close.
Yeah.
And then the offensive line, I mean, it's decent. Mike Pouncey is a great center. I know the Steelers have had Marquise Pouncey forever, who's also really good, but Mike Pouncey is good too. And, Phillip Rivers needs that. He needs that protection because he's not a mobile quarterback. So, and the tight end situation, we'll see how that goes. I like the Virgil Green pick. Just have him as like a backup because he was always a reliable kind of second tight end for Denver when they had Julius Thomas and when Peyton Manning was there. Austin Eckler, I saw he had flashes of goodness last year when Melvin Gordon was injured. I just don't think he can carry the team. And I don't think Justin Jackson's going to be that second guy that can really be there to pick up the slack if Eckler isn't playing where he can. But the defense is this defense, like Zach said, I think they're a top 5 defense. I mean, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram are scary. Like, for any team that goes up against them. I remember when the Steelers had to play them last year, and I was afraid for Ben because, that's a scary pair.
You have 2 really good tackles.
Right. I was like, even with our good offensive line, I was still pretty scared and then, the secondary is phenomenal. I mean, Casey Hayward and Derwin James are superstars. Michael Davis is serviceable, and Rayshawn Jenkins can get it done at the safety position. And Desmond King, I mean, even for a nickelback, he's good. You're right about the linebacker core. I mean, Thomas Davis brings that veteran leadership, but he can't. I mean, he's up there in age.
I'm not even going to try and pronounce that outside that number 42 guy.
Uchenna Nwosu and Denzel Perryman. So, they're decent, but you're right. That definitely is the weakness here of this group. But, I mean, it's one of those things, like I said before, I went so back and forth between the Chargers and Chiefs on who I wanted in first and who I thought was going to get first. And honestly, my personal opinion here, I kind of want the Chiefs to get a bit of a reality check this year because all these people are coming out and saying that the Chiefs are going to be the next dynasty and blah, 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 blah. They're going to be good. They're going to be good for years, blah, 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 blah. I kind of want them to come back down to earth this year. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, although I'd like to see it. But I think if Melvin Gordon was committed and was for sure going to come back, I might actually put the Chargers above the Chiefs. but that is the one question mark right now that I think is going to, that makes me decide that the Chargers are going to finish second and not first. If Melvin Gordon was for sure coming back, I would say Chargers first. But without him, I think second. I think probably. I think they could tie the Chiefs again. I think 11 or 12 wins. They could both go 12-4 again or whatever. So, or actually, no, the Chiefs didn't go 12-4 last year. But they could both kind of tie at 12-4, and then I think the Chiefs will have a 5-1 division record. I think the Chargers will get one win over them, but I think they'll be, if they tie with the Chiefs, they'll have a worse division record. Like they'll be 4-2, and the Chiefs will be 5-1 in the division. So, but yeah, you're right. I think this is probably whichever one between the Chiefs and Chargers. Whichever one of them doesn't win the division is going to be a guaranteed wild card.
It's really going to come down to their head-to-head games, I think. They're going to be within a game or two of each other. So
right, yeah. And
it's those head-to-head games that I put a lot of emphasis on because their teams are pretty similar, So
right. Yeah, and whoever doesn't win the division is going to get a wild card. I'm just going to say it right now. Yeah. It's going to happen.
You're going to lock it?
I'm going to lock that. I will lock that.
No double lock, but just a normal lock.
No, normal lock. Whoever doesn't win the division.
Crazy.
Yeah. yeah, you're right. It is too crazy. But whoever doesn't win the division between the Chargers and Chiefs will get a wild card spot.
Yeah, I'll lock that too. I think that'll be the case. And continuing the kicker trend, I forgot about the Chargers kicking problems. They're a team that's had kicking problems too. So they've got this guy, Michael Badgley and Ty Long, competing for the kickers.
Ty Long's the punter, so.
Okay, never mind then. So I guess it's Badgley then. I guess I feel good about him, but not too familiar with him. I know they've ran through kickers in the past, so they've had their fair share of kicking woes. But I'm not going to say that makes them a bad team or anything in this scenario.
Yeah. Oh, there's Melvin Gordon right there on the reserves. You were talking about he wasn't there.
DNR, I guess that's did not report. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's good. So I guess they do this analysis and stuff too. I didn't read this stuff about that, but yeah, because I was looking too. Jerry Tillery, a lot of their defensive draft picks are pretty low in their depth chart. I guess I explained that in that paragraph, but Tillery, I think, is going to be pretty good. And Adderley, man, he's a hard-hitting safety.
It's like he's like that Cam Chancellor-esque safety.
Yeah, man, he goes out to hurt people. So that's the Chargers. And then thanks again to the Time Skew podcast for adding that question in about Melvin Gordon. All right, so now we're moving to the seller of the division here with the Oakland Raiders. Unfortunately for the Raiders fans, I would look forward to Golden State Warriors basketball this upcoming season. I'm just gonna say it. I know they're diehard
Oakland A's baseball.
Yeah. Well, see, that sucks, man. For Oakland, they're losing their basketball team across the bay, at least, but their football team's going out of state. But
they're only going to be left with the Athletics.
Mm-hmm. They're not great either, but
not right now. They're not. They got a history of being good, but not right now.
So, how are the Raiders in year 2 of John Gruden going to do? And if you ask me, this team is trending down and down every day. I'll say 4 wins. I can't see them getting 6 wins, honestly. I'll put 3 to 5, and I'll go with 4 in the middle. And this team has got a weird group of people, man. You got
Antonio Brown. Drama train on this team.
They're on Hard Knocks, and I don't usually watch Hard Knocks, but this would, I might catch an episode or two because the personalities, man. You've got Antonio Brown, the ultimate diva of the NFL. You've got Richie Incognito, the ultimate bully of the NFL. You got Derek Carr, the suck-up guy that just sucks up to Coach Gruden, saying, trying to win him over. You got Nathan Peterman, the king of the NFL meme world. who's
Yeah,
probably
the
going to be
Bill
their
the Bills
backup.
fans started a Kickstarter for him to fund his retirement.
Oh my God. And and then defensively, you've got Vontez Burfict,
God.
with Antonio Brown on the same team. Let me look for some more. Cleveland Farrell. He's unfair to him, but just because they passed on Josh Allen and Ed
Yeah, all
Oliver,
the
he's going to
Raiders
be
fans were like,
unfairly judged.
"What?"
Yeah, he's going to be unfairly judged. I think he had a good preseason game, so I hope I hope he's not a bust. I hope he seems like a good guy, but this team is just filled with all these crazy personalities, man, that I just don't see them winning a whole lot of games. Uh, they've got, they got better at receiver, I guess, with Antonio Brown, but is he even going to play? I mean, he's got that whole helmet thing going on right now. He's got a sore foot. I've seen the
Yeah,
pictures. It's
frostbite on
nasty.
his
Have you seen
feet.
the pictures of that? Oh man, his foot is looking nasty right now. And it
Might be
just
too inappropriate to show on
Yeah,
YouTube.
I don't want to subject you guys to that picture, but it's kind of like Shaquille O'Neal one time they showed his foot, like how nasty that was, and I don't want to talk about that, but man, this is such a weird team. Like, I don't think Derek Carr's the QB of the future, and I don't think Gruden is bought into him. But Carr's trying to suck up to him, and then it's crazy. Gruden, like, he loves Nathan Peterman, though. He talks highly about him so much.
For
So
some reason.
yeah, it makes you question Gruden, man. Like, oh God,
Maybe
I
he
know
just
what
came. Maybe he just came back to coach in the league just to screw with everybody.
I
Like,
mean, Trent Brown is a nice addition, nice free agency addition. I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of drama with him. I think he'll be solid. So the offensive line, I think, will be pretty good. Uh, I'm a big fan of Josh Jacobs as running back, and Alabama running backs tend to do pretty well. They tend not to bust like the quarterbacks do.
yeah.
The Alabama quarterbacks aren't first
Well, the
round
jury
grade.
the jury's still out on Derrick Henry.
Yeah, it is. Um, but he wasn't a first round pick anyway, so it's not like he's held to that a super high standard. But they've got Josh Jacobs here, and I think he's going to be better than a lot of the Alabama running backs have been in their rookie years. I guess I forgot about Trent Richardson; he was a major bust, but
Well, yeah. For the first
but
couple of seasons, he wasn't.
yeah, oh my God, the first year of our fantasy football family league, I picked him in the second round. I'll never get over that. That was his bust year because he was a second round prospect. But Josh Jacobs, I think since Alabama had like a running back by committee backfield last year, he's going to be fresh coming into this year. It's not like he had to carry Alabama's offense by any stretch. He barely played, honestly, but he's got the talent to be a first round pick. He was the number one running back coming out of college. And Doug Martin and Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington too. They're kind of stacked at the backup running back situation. So that's a bright spot for the team. Trying to be positive here. Hunter Renfrow, I think, is going to be a good slot receiver for him as a rookie. They're a young team, but they're just not ready to compete in this division at all. Cleveland Farrell, they're going to hope they get sacks out of him. Considering that they gave up Khalil Mack, the best pass rusher in the game, for a couple of these rookies that we're talking about. And the rest of our defense is, it's not very good. And they've got Vontez Burfict starting.
Boy's got Vontez Burfict and go out there and like throat stomp somebody or something,
That's the Raiders, man. He fits. But yeah, the secondary is filled with a lot of these guys with high round picks that have kind of busted. Jonathan Abram, I'm shocked he's not on as the starting guy because he was a first round pick for him, and he's another hard hitting guy that really is really cocky about himself. I heard from the Hard Knocks he wouldn't even like back down to Gruden. So he's got a personality too. I didn't even mention before, but So I imagine he'll be starting somewhere at one of these safety spots. I guess they're trying to hold hope on Carl Joseph, and they did bring in Lamarcus Joyner, but honestly, I think he should play more as like a cornerback spot than a safety. But um, and then their kicker Daniel Carlson, not going to give too high of a grade for him, but I guess he's their guy. They don't have any competition for him right now. Um, it's an interesting team. It's not a team I think that's going to win a whole lot of games, but honestly, yeah, I might just watch a couple Raiders games just to see how all these guys play together. But Connor, I know you know Antonio Brown pretty well, so I'll let you talk about him and a couple of these other guys that you're familiar with, like Burfict and stuff. So.
I mean, all I can say about Antonio Brown is, boy, am I happy that we dumped him because, boy, I thought he was a problem last year, and he's just turned into the epitome of problems in the league right now. I mean, and as Zach said, we were talking about this earlier, that it's probably because he was on the Madden cover. He's getting hit by the Madden curse right now. So watch out, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I just don't see this team. I mean, it's so funny on the offense here. Like, they have pieces on the offense. The defense is a different story, but on offense, I mean, Derek Carr can be serviceable. I mean, he had that 1 year where he was really good, and everybody thought he was the future, but that's not the case. And obviously, Antonio Brown, I mean, for all of his drama and everything, he's still, I would argue, one of the top receivers in the league. And so, and like I said, they have a good problem at running back in that they have too many in the terms of Jacobs, Martin, Richard, and Washington. You really have like 4 running backs that you can plug in at any time that you want. So, you can keep guys fresh if they want to keep all 4 of those guys. I don't know if they will, but I mean, the main problem on offense for them is tight end.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know who Darren
I glossed
Waller
over
is.
that. No.
Yeah. So, and obviously, offensive line is okay. Richie Incognito coming out of retirement to come back for them this year, and he's suspended already. So, I don't know what the deal is with him. I mean, he seemed like he had kind of mellowed out in Buffalo. Like, they kind of put him in his place, but then
Yeah.
towards the end of that, he turned back into his old, bully type self. So I don't know what's going on with him. And then on defense, like I said, Burfict. He can always go out there and throat stomp somebody or give somebody a concussion or whatever. But
Yeah.
Because with the amount of times he's been suspended, I don't even know how he's still in the league. Because it seems like every year he's getting he'll get like a 4-game suspension, and then he'll come back, and then later on in the year he'll get like another 2-game suspension for something else.
Yeah.
And he'll get like fined for this and fined for that. And I'm like, I don't know how this guy still has money. So, yeah, and then Cleveland Farrell, that was, we had a couple shocks on draft night, but that was definitely the first big shock on draft night, when we were all expecting the Raiders were going to take Josh Allen, and then all of a sudden they're like, the Raiders take Cleveland Farrell, and it was funny looking at their fans, because it was kind of the difference between the Giants pick and the Raiders pick was when the Giants picked Daniel Jones, everybody was mad. Like, they were all like, what are you doing, Gettleman? You suck. Whereas, like, all the Raiders fans just looked kind of confused. They were like, yay! Like, wait, who is this guy again?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this team is, it's so funny when you have a team like this that it has pieces to win games, but those pieces aren't going to mesh and, work together at all. So, yeah, and when you've got a backup quarterback situation like Mike Glennon and Nathan Peterman, you're not really in a good situation there. So, I mean, maybe this is all part of Gruden's plan. I don't know. I mean, he's got a 10-year contract, so he's got a lot of time to make it happen. But so far, it doesn't look like we're off to a good start.
No.
So, yeah, I would have to give the Raiders like 3 or 4 wins. I mean, I think they're going to be competing for that first draft pick again.
Yep.
Like, between them, Miami, and the Giants, it's going to be a fight for that first pick in the draft. So I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I hope Antonio Brown fails miserably after the way he acted.
Yeah, we're going to see how, he's used to playing in like the playoffs and stuff.
Well, he's used to having a Hall of Fame quarterback, too.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. But like I said, it's one of those teams that's like we project to be like Giants and Dolphins bad, but I might watch a couple of their games just to see how they just to see how they are because you're not going to be turning on Cardinals or Dolphins games or anything, but as just a fan, of the NFL, it's going to be interesting to watch. I think they're more interesting than the Broncos, honestly. The
Oh
Broncos are
yeah.
like your bread and butter 8-8 team. The Raiders are like your, kind of like what's that other flashy team that are like the kind of like the Browns that we're going to talk about later in
Oh
next
yeah.
week.
More,
But
lots of personalities there too.
yeah, so that'll kind of wrap up our NFL talk for this episode. We've got Connor back, like I said, for Connor's current events. So let's
Woo!
start with the NASCAR here.
We need some kind of intro for that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, Michigan International Raceway. I didn't really watch this race at all. Michigan's not my. I think it's one of the worst tracks on the circuit. Honestly, it's one of the most boring. So
Mhm.
it kind of upsets me that they go there 2 times a year. But I was happy when they got rid of. They don't go to New Hampshire twice anymore, so I was happy about that. But anyway, Kevin Harvick winning the race. I mean, it's kind of a similar top 5, top 10 has it been for the past few races. Like Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex are all up there. I see a 7th place finish for Ryan Preece. That's pretty good. I wouldn't expect that. William Byron and Chase Elliott are still doing good for Hendrick Motorsports. Actually, I see all 3 Hendrick drivers right there, 8 through 10. Byron, Elliott, and Bowman. I saw Jimmy Johnson had a bit. He probably had a wreck because I saw he finished like 37th or something.
Mhm.
So he must have gotten caught up in a wreck. My guy Matt DiBenedetto finishing 20th. You win some, you lose some. Oh well,
Yeah,
I still love him. But yeah, I mean, we're getting down to the nitty gritty now in the playoffs. I mean, especially I saw Clint Boyer had a DNF in the race, so him and Jimmy Johnson right now are the two big names that are kind of on that cut line on the edge of the playoffs, and they both had terrible races this weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see how they progress going forward and if they can make the playoffs. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was right on the cut line. Boyer had a little bit of a cushion, but not much. And there's only I think 3 races left in the season because the next race is going to be at Bristol. Yeah, it's going to be Bristol, then Darlington, and then Indianapolis, and then you hit the playoffs. So there's only
hmm
3 more races. So, and also things could be shaken up too if someone outside of that top 16 ends up like winning a race. Like if Matt
yeah.
DiBenedetto were to get a win, that automatically clinches him a spot in the playoffs as long as he's in the top 30 in points, which I know he is. I think he's like
hmm
23rd or 22nd right now. So that could shake things up too, because you never know in NASCAR who could somehow pull a win out of the hat. It doesn't even if the race doesn't go the whole way. If it's one of those rain delayed races or whatever,
Yeah.
we've seen crazy winners in those, like Justin Haley at Daytona. Never would have thought he would have won a race. So uh, that's the situation with NASCAR. No Eric DraftKings lineup this time. And I know I've been kind of trying to go away from Formula One because it's kind of the same thing every week that I've been mentioning, like, Lewis Hamilton winning or Mercedes winning. And they're actually on their summer break right now, so the next race isn't going to be until August 30th. But some big news coming out of Formula One is that so one of the major teams in the sport, Red Bull Racing, they're like kind of the third best team in the sport behind like Ferrari and Mercedes in terms of performance. But also in the sport, there's a team called Toro Rosso, which is kind of like a developmental team or so to Red Bull. They're joined. The two teams are joined, which is pretty rare in motorsports. You don't see two teams that are in baseball all the time. You have these like the major league team and then their farm team. And this
hmm
is like a similar relationship here, where like Red Bull would be like the major league team, and then Toro Rosso is kind of like the farm team. But so since they're connected, they can switch their drivers around. And at the end of last season, Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull Racing to go to Renault Racing. Like they didn't renew his contract because they wanted Max Verstappen to be the guy who, he's having a good season right now. But they brought up Pierre Gasly from Toro Rosso, and he had just been having a terrible season. It's like, okay, you're getting these, you're finishing outside of the points. Whereas, when you're with Toro Rosso, okay, you don't have the equipment, to consistently finish in the points. But if you're a good driver, you can sometimes. Whereas with Red Bull, you should be finishing in the points every week. With the equipment they have, if you're a good enough driver. And, the fact that he was getting, 8th and 9th place finishes and not performing at the level, they have decided that they're going to bring up Alexander Albon, who is one of the Toro Rosso racers, up to Red Bull, and they're going to put Pierre Gasly, they're going to demote him back to the farm team. So I'm interested to see how that turns out, because I was pretty baffled at why they brought up Pierre Gasly in the first place. I was like, why'd they decide to not renew Ricciardo's contract and bring up this guy to the main team? I don't get it. Like, I never thought he was that good. So that's going to be interesting to watch going forward, to see how Albon does on the Red Bull team. If he can start, pulling out consistent, like top 6, top 5 finishes in the Red Bull car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And like Eric said a couple podcasts ago, like, neither of us was known anything about Formula One. Now I'm mad at myself when I get these trivia questions wrong on HQ Sports and they're Formula One. I'm like, dang it, I know Connor
said that. I got that one wrong too.
Yeah. But still, yeah, man, I was mad at myself on that one for not trusting the podcasting, and I was going off the Discord chat. But so now I'll kind of talk a little bit about this NCAA agent rule thing that kind of, they made this rule last week about, you can't have to like try and protect the players. They said that you have to have an agent who's got a bachelor's degree, which most of the agents do have bachelor's degrees. So it really only applies to this guy, Rich Paul, who, if you really follow the NBA, you know about this guy. He's been with LeBron his whole career, and he's built up a pretty significant group of players that he represents, like Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons in this picture here, Draymond Green. There's some other people too, and he's one of the main faces of the NBA because he goes to extreme measures for his players' contracts and stuff. He, like Anthony Davis, the whole trade request thing, that was all done through him, and he doesn't have a bachelor's degree, which, that's why people call this the Rich Paul rule, because he's really the only guy that's affected by this new rule, even though you could say he's one of the most successful, even if you question him sometimes with how the AD situation was handled and stuff. Like, he gets guys their money, and one of the best guys to do that, they're kind of disqualifying in this case. And does a bachelor's degree really, qualify you as an agent? Does it really make you an ethical person or not? It just seemed like the NCAA. I think the NCAA got so much like criticism on this that they caved in and are not gonna go through with this like proposed rule that they had. And I think it's a good thing that they did that, but the reason I think that the NCAA made this rule in the first place is because Rich Paul has been kind of outspoken against the NCAA with like the profits and how student athletes don't make any money and that sort of situation. He's kind of anti, the NCAA profiting so much and not so much the players. So that's kind of, I think the NCAA wanted to, flex their power on him, but then it got to be, it's such a ridiculous thing with the bachelor's degree, like, that doesn't make a person ethical or not. So they had to, I feel like the fan pressure.
It's no, reflection on whether they can do their job or not either.
Yeah, you have to be certified, like an agent certification thing. That's still, that's obviously important, but really,
right.
The bachelor's degree thing didn't make a whole lot of sense, and it really was just one guy that was targeted for that. So they've switched that. It's back to how it was before. You don't need a bachelor's degree. So that's the news for college basketball. And then NFL wise, Rishard Matthew just retired recently from the Saints, formerly with the Titans, but the guy's, pretty young, and I'm still really confused by this message,
Yeah.
brainwashing and, this weird stuff. I'm not too sure what it all means, but, he's
Well, the
gone from the
fact,
league. Yeah.
yeah, well, and the fact that he said, like, he says he's feeling like a disposable player. I mean, well, if you're feeling like a disposable player, like teams don't want you, then maybe you're just not that good.
Hmm.
Like, because obviously guys like, you know, Julio Jones and Saquon Barkley, they're not disposable because they're good. They're valuable
Yeah, yeah.
players. But, you know, every team has their disposable players. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, we can survive without them. And, it's probably because you're just not that good. So the fact that you're whining and complaining, like, oh, I feel like a disposable player, brainwashing, fakeness, it's like, it just sounds like a big, like, crybaby
Yeah,
situation.
I can
It's
see
like,
that.
like really just like man up, dude.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I said to Connor earlier, it kind of reminds you of one of those situations where like you got fired, but you tell everybody you quit or something like that. Like you try and say you quit
You
the
can't
job,
fire
but
me, I quit.
yeah, you left them. Like you retired before they cut you, and he was. I remember Titans fans, man, they were so high, and oh, we have Rashard Matthews, and he'd get picked up in fantasy leagues, by a couple teams, and drop the next week because he'd have a big week and then not have a couple. And then he'd go on like 3 or 4 weeks without one. But so that the player retirement theme, continues on with Catanzaro, now Matthews. We'll see who drops next, but uh, I don't know if Connor sent anybody, that if he's got any bold predictions or you got any bold predictions for
Any bold
retirements or
predictions for
cuts
retirements?
or
Oh,
trades
jeez.
or anything like that?
Well, I
I
gotta
mean, you
think
got
about we're
one last.
doing the AFC North next, so I gotta think
Yeah.
about that. Um, I think. God, what am I trying? I think and this isn't gonna happen like within the next week or so. But if I had to make a bold prediction, I think before the end of the season, one of the two between Jarvis Landry and OBJ will be gone from Cleveland before the end of the season.
Wow, that's bold.
Be- We'll get into
Yeah.
more detail on that next week, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's a bold prediction. I think one of the two of them won't be in Cleveland by the end of the year.
Wow. Okay. All right, guys. So thank you to everybody listening. Thank you for your questions, and make sure you guys leave your AFC North questions. Obviously, Connor's a Steelers fan. It's going to be a Steelers heavy show. We'll be talking a lot about them. We'll be asking them questions. We'll hit the other teams too, though, so don't worry. And take care, guys.
Peace.